Well, let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby, beside me here in our Westminster studio. So a pretty tough day for the Prime Minister. Just give us a bit of background to what's actually going on here, what you think is going on here.
Let's unpack. It's been the first thing to say, it's been a very messy 24 hours, and the Prime Minister there is in the Commons having to defend his Chief of Staff, having to defend his Health Secretary, and having to make it clear to his backbenchers that he is not authorising briefings against his own cabinet. If it feels a bit like the days of Tory infighting, you would not be imagining that. There is awful bloodletting at the moment within the Labour Party, and I think that was reflected in that terse Prime Minister's questions, where Kemi Badenoch was on the front foot, almost teasing the Prime Minister. Her benches were in full voice, jeering at the opposition, and that was a bunch of stony-faced Labour MPs there. I mean, Jane, would it be helpful if we kind of talk about what's gone on in the part? How have we got to this point, right? So the first thing to say is that there has been for days rumours about a possible leadership challenge to Keir Starmer. It kicked off really at the turn of September. You saw all the stuff around Andy Burnham and the party conference, and it's been driven really by the fundamentals of a government that keeps having false starts and not being able to get on the front foot, terrible polling, and a group of MPs in Parliament increasingly nervous that they're going to lose the seats at the next general election, and questions about whether Keir Starmer is the right guy to lead them into the next general election. So that's the underlying conversation that's going on. I think what's happened in recent days is that there has been rumours about whether or not a leadership bid or challenge could come after the budget in light of signalling of tax rises and the political pain that this is going to bring onto the Labour Party, and a Prime Minister that has made clear promises at a general election and broken manifesto pledges. So that's the context in which this has happened.
And then added into this, Wes Streeting has a speech today. He's on the broadcast round this morning, and then it turns out that it sounds like someone at Number 10 has been briefing against him and saying he's the plotter, he's the traitor.
So what's happened in the past 24 hours? So that's the context. Now, yesterday, I and a few other journalists were told from sources close to the Prime Minister that if there was a challenge to him, Keir Starmer would fight. So he wouldn't resign, but he would fight to keep the job as Prime Minister. So if there's a leadership challenge, there would be a leadership contest. I think the idea in how that was briefed out was to try and just put the plotting to bed, to try and warn people off this, to say you're only going to make things worse, the markets will freak out, you'll have a horrible period of infighting ahead of local elections, it will just make things worse for Labour, just don't do it. But then what happened was what became attached to that briefing was talk about Wes Streeting, and his name was kind of openly put out there. And some allies of Starmer were reported in some of the newspapers, the Times in particular, as saying that Wes was the plotter and Wes needed to kind of pipe down. So Wes Streeting's name, I mean, we all know that Wes Streeting has leadership ambitions, but there's a difference between one day wanting to be the leader and actively plotting. What happened after that was quite astonishing, because then Wes Streeting's team had to come out on record late last night and say he is not briefing against the Prime Minister, and then they turned their ire and fire on Number 10. And this is Wes Streeting on the morning round this morning. He came on Sky News. This is what he said to Sophie Ridge.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract from our ability to get across the message of the change we're making, the difference we're making on things that voters actually care about.
There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked.
So whether or not Wes Streeting is plotting against the Prime Minister or not, what is clear is that the Prime Minister doesn't appear to have control of what's happening in number 10.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that, I mean, one, Wes Streeting has outwardly said, I am loyal to the Prime Minister, and it might be that that was the calculation of those who were warning in the briefings, that they wanted Wes Streeting to come and publicly say he was loyal. But also what Wes Streeting has done in doing that has turned fire onto number 10. And what you've got now in Prime Minister's questions is a Prime Minister saying, I didn't authorise the briefing. So then the next question is, well, who is authorising the briefings and what are you going to do about it? So it's actually put Keir Starmer in a worse position. So if there were good intentions, the outcomes are bad. Now, we've had an update. This coming from Rob Powell, who's just been in the huddle with the Prime Minister's political spokesperson after Prime Minister's questions. So I got some updates for you. Number one, the Prime Minister having given a half-hearted defence of his Chief of Staff, because Kemi Badenoch was clearly saying that the toxic culture is coming from number 10. That's run by Morgan McSweeney, his Chief of Staff, asking the Prime Minister if he has confidence in him. The Prime Minister in Prime Minister's questions, you heard the clip, said that Morgan McSweeney was delivering for the government. They have now said, yes, the Prime Minister does have confidence in McSweeney, because that was a hanging question from that Prime Minister's questions. Rob's also saying that number 10 is suggesting that the briefings against Wes were attributed to people outside number 10. The Prime Minister has complete confidence in his top team. But when his political spokesman was asked directly if number 10 believe all these briefings are coming out from outside number 10, what his political spokesperson said was that she pointed towards the briefing attributions, saying any attacks on a cabinet minister are unacceptable and will be dealt with in the appropriate way. So it seems like number 10 are trying to distance themselves from the briefings. They're trying to, if you like, put the genie back in the bottle, but it is now out and it's causing the Prime Minister more problems than he began this week with. And my God, he's got a lot of problems. The final thought I would say, Jen, I know it's all a bit complicated and back and forth, is there is a bigger question here about whether Labour MPs think that Keir Starmer is the right person to lead them into another general election campaign. And the longer the government seems to be struggling, when they're looking at them breaking manifesto problems on tax, when the polls aren't moving and number 10 appears to be in a mess and they can't go on the front foot, all this does is ebb away any confidence that the party has in the Prime Minister and his ability to lead them. And I think that this discussion about whether he's the right person has been building for some weeks. As I understand it, there was a rather settled view within the party and those that think maybe there would be a better leader that could come in and communicate better, that was more charismatic, that could take the fight better to Nigel Farage, that kind of move, if it comes, and it's a big if, would come after the May local elections. So in a way, some people are saying to me today on the backbenches, number 10 have blown up this imagined coup against the Prime Minister after the budget, when actually that they've given kind of amplification to something that wasn't really brewing right now. But there is still a serious question about whether it comes, when it comes, if it comes, and what happens in the May elections. So it's a really uncomfortable period for a Prime Minister already on the ropes as he prepares to break his manifesto pledges on tax.